The Prime Minister wraps up his official visit to India today with the outcome he was after, really, the strongest commitment yet from the government there to finalise a free trade deal. Will it eventuate? Well, John Key and his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi have agreed to work towards the early completion of a comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, with India set to be the most populous country in the world within the next 10 or 11 years. An FTA or anything even vaguely approaching it would give New Zealand access to a market that's already huge and growing fast. Here's our political reporter, Demelza Leslie.
John Key says free trade talks with India weren't going anywhere before this trip. But after his meeting with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he says negotiators now have some very clear directions.
There's definitely a mood shift here. Yeah, I've learnt the hard way in FTAs that they always typically take a little bit longer, and it's a protracted, sometimes quite challenging process. But the prize at the end of it is, in my experience, always well and truly worth it. But you do have to just accept that while you can try and speed things up with the best will in the world, frankly, they're like treaty settlements. You know, you don't want to go back to them. You know, it's one go, and you've got to get it right, and you have to have willing partners.
The Indian Central State Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs, Arjun Ram Meghwal, who also met with Mr Key, says there are many areas New Zealand and India can join hands and increase their bilateral relations.
So my request that this time, when your negotiator and our negotiators should meet, we should reach a conclusion regarding free trade agreement that will lead to the business bilateral relations between New Zealand and India.
The Chief Executive of the National Institution for Transforming India, Amitabh Kant, says the country is at the beginning of a curve of building up a tremendous relationship with New Zealand.
By 2024, we'll be the only country with a billion smartphone, and with the universal payment interface, we have the possibility of becoming a cashless, paperless society by 2024-25. And therefore, when you combine this immense possibility and potential for India to expand its growth by using technology to leapfrog, I think there are several areas where India and New Zealand can work together to expand their possibility.
It's only Mr Key's second trip to India. His first was 5 years ago, and since then there have been 10 rounds of free trade negotiations. The New Zealand Agricultural Trade Envoy Mike Peterson says the latest trip has been hugely beneficial.
We've seen pretty slow action, to be honest, when it comes to trade, both in RCEP and with our bilateral. And so the fact that Modi's talking about it now will certainly help the message get down into the bowels of the administration, and hopefully we'll get some action.
Do you think it's still going to take a long time, though?
I do. I think that the reality is that India has not done free trade agreements with any other countries. It's something that they find increasingly difficult to do. We've got to remember they have, in the agricultural sense, they have over 60% of their population employed in or around farming. So it's incredibly sensitive politically, and we've got a bit of work to do.
Now it is up to trade negotiators to nut out a deal that the two countries will both be happy to eventually sign. In New Delhi for Checkpoint, Demelza Leslie.